everyone. Welcome. Thanks to all the parents who are joining us. And I know more folks are joining as we get going. My name is Jamie Schiffman. I work in the Office of the President at Hillel International, and we're so pleased to welcome you today to this parents only session as part of the spring version of the Hillel College Fair. And we're really pleased that you're with us this afternoon. We have a great program. We're going to have the opportunity to hear from Adam Lehman, who is Hillel International CEO and President. And he's going to provide you with an overview of what's happening in the Hillel world right now. And then most importantly, we have three fantastic parents who are active at Hillel, and their kids are on college campuses. Many of them, all of them have been through multiple campus searches and are ready and excited to share their experiences with you. We have lots of questions for them already, and we hope that you will also go ahead and put into the chat and send me some questions that you're thinking about as we go through. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to put those into the chat. You can send them directly to me, to Jamie Schiffman. Before we get into the program, it's really my pleasure to introduce Adam Lehman, who is Hillel International CEO and President. He was appointed last year in January of 2020. Prior to that, he served as Hillel International COO. He brings 2 decades worth of experience in growing new technology, media, marketing, and ventures. And then he dipped his toe and ventured into nonprofit work. And as many of you probably remember, the president of Hair Club used to say, not only am I the president, I'm also a member. Adam is also not just the president of Hillel, but he's also a proud parent of 2 college students. His oldest daughter, Dahlia, is a senior at Washington University in St. Louis, and his younger daughter, Jessica, is a sophomore at Tulane. So he is also where many of you are sitting today, not so long ago, and has, just as all of you are probably maybe sitting and working at home, his students tend to pop in and out of his Zooms when they were home from campus, and they probably know much more about Hillel work than they probably ever wanted to. So without further ado, I'm really pleased to introduce Adam, who is going to take us through the rest of our program.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and thanks to everyone who's joining for this program. Having, as Jamie said, been through this process multiple times, I know how challenging and frankly daunting it can be, and yet it's such an amazing experience and opportunity for you, for your children, to get ready to take that next step. And while you will be looking at a broad range of variables and factors in deciding where your child is going to end up in college, Jewish life can really be a helpful factor to consider in terms of the experience they'll have, and frankly, the opportunity they'll have to develop themselves, Jewishly, but also just as a young person. So before we get into the panel, we've got 3 terrific parents who are volunteering their time to share perspective. I'm going to share a bit more about Hillel. By the way, I have to say, when Jamie started talking about the Hair Club for Men, I wasn't sure if she was heading towards my receding hairline, but as she said, it wasn't about my hair. It was really about the fact that I am a parent, and really, as a parent, apart from being a Hillel professional, so appreciative of what Hillel is able to offer students and families. Fundamentally, we exist to serve Jewish students and their families, to support, engage, and inspire every Jewish student wherever they may be attending school. Jamie, if you want to go ahead and share the presentation, I'm just going to walk through a few slides to, again, give you a sense for Hillel. So, our mission is to enrich the lives of Jewish students so that they can in turn enrich the Jewish people and the world. Our vision to inspire every Jewish student to make an enduring commitment to Jewish life, learning, and Israel. So how do we do that? If we go to the next slide, we do that through 1,200 really committed, talented Hillel professionals who are spread across more than 500 campuses in North America and 15 other countries around the world. We have the privilege at Hillel of engaging with more than 140,000 students each year, 50,000 of those students who get very deeply involved through their Hillel opportunities in ways that I'll describe in a bit more detail. So if we go to the next slide, As I mentioned before, our vision is to inspire every Jewish student to make an enduring commitment to Jewish life learning in Israel. So when you think about what we do at Hillel as the central address for Jewish life on campus, it does track to that. Of course, we are there for Shabbat, holidays, other important moments along the Jewish annual calendar. We also offer ongoing Jewish learning opportunities and the most extensive opportunities for Israel engagement of any other organization, whether that's on campus or through travel to Israel. And thankfully, we're going to begin to see, I think, much more robust opportunities for students to get back to Israel starting this summer. But in addition to those core offerings at Hillel, we're really there to meet the broad needs and interests of the young people that we're able to serve. And so that comes in the form of leadership development opportunities, service and volunteerism opportunities, wellness, and other life-enhancing opportunities, and just the ability to be a part of a robust and inclusive Jewish community and to help create and lead that community. If we go to the next slide, when you are in the moment and space you are in, again, it can be a intimidating moment, and that continues as you get to where you're ready to drop your child off at campus, for that beginning of a campus experience. It's such an exciting time, but it can also be a very anxiety-producing time. I want to at least briefly talk about what you can expect, at least from a Jewish life on campus point of view. We are very dedicated to trying to make that transition as easy and frankly, exciting and positive as possible. The biggest takeaway, if you remember anything from this part of the program, is once your son or daughter, or child has identified the campus where they are going to attend school, please reach out to the Hillel professional or team on staff there. They are there to be helpful. They are there to support your student. And if you're in touch with them before your student arrives on campus, they can make you aware of a wealth of opportunities to meet other students who are coming into that class, or just more generally for when they arrive. As some specific examples, many of our Hillels offer Fresh Fest, which is a whole Shabbaton or multi-day set of programs and experiences that often involves an opportunity for early move-in to dorms, whether for Shabbat observance reasons or just because the student is participating in a Fresh Fest. We also, almost across the board, offer a major welcome Shabbat, barbecue, or other program during the first week of school. Increasingly, we have mentor programs connecting second, third, and fourth year students with incoming students to really serve as just a friendly face and someone who can provide guidance to a student as they're starting their college career. So again, please be in touch with your campus Hillel to make sure that you're able to take advantage of opportunities as the school year is getting started. If we go to the next slide, most of what we do through Hillel is a highly localized experience. We really work to customize the Hillel team and the Hillel program to the campus in question, to its culture, to that unique campus community. That said, we also offer a growing array of programs and experiences in Jewish life that we are making available across the Hillel movement. And I just want to highlight a few of those for you tonight so that you're aware as you get to this point with your student. First of all, we offer Hillel-based Birthright Israel trips. We're the largest birthright provider in the 18 to 22 segment. And that's a terrific experience that, again, will become available, I think, beginning later this summer, God willing. We offer a Jewish Learning Fellowship which is a really unique way for students, regardless of whether they have any experience in Jewish learning or any baseline knowledge, to think about the big questions in their lives from a place of Jewish wisdom. We are growing out our Hillel Campus Service Corps of volunteer service interns. We're now in more than 100 campuses and growing with that opportunity. Even though most of our programming in the fall will again be in person, we offer a really deep number of programs and experiences on Hillel at home. And if you haven't spent time looking through the program offerings, they're going to continue to be there for students and for parents as well. We have an engagement internship program that's offered across the Hillel movement, through which students can gain skills and experience building community in a peer-to-peer way with other Jewish students on campus. And we have our Mitzvot program, which enables students to get involved in civic engagement, voter registration, and the like, again, from a place of Jewish wisdom and practice. So those are just some examples of the movement-wide programs that your students will have available to them. If we go to the next slide, most of the work we do is fortunately in a positive sphere of helping Jewish students and the broader campus community find opportunities to engage with Jewish life, to grow Jewishly, and to really grow as young adults, as leaders, and as people. And at the same time, students do face challenges, and Jewish students in particular face some unique challenges. And so we work hard to be there to address those challenges as well. Anti-Semitism is fortunately not, a part of most students' lives at any given point, and yet we have seen a troubling increase in issues of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel activity across campuses. And so we work very hard to take on those challenges, to make sure that Jewish students can express their Judaism with pride and can feel like they have the same safe campus climate that we hope for and strive for all students. In addition, many students in this period are dealing with heightened levels of stress and even isolation by virtue of the pandemic. And so we have doubled down in our efforts to train our entire Hillel staff so they can be there as an important support at a wellness level, even in terms of mental health triage, not as mental health professionals, but to recognize issues and be able to support students and refer them to other resources, where helpful. If we go to the last slide, this is just a sliver of what Hillel is and can mean for your students, for your family. We, just live and breathe to be of service and to make a difference in the Jewish journeys and overall development of your children. And so please be in touch. You can learn more through our Hillel College Guide by going to hillel.org, or as I said, Hillel at Home. And again, please, as you identify a school where you're going to have a student on campus, please be in touch with the local Hillel staff. You can reach out to me or others if you have questions of who that is or how to be in touch. So that is the dog and pony delivered in the 10 minutes as planned for. Now we're going to get to the good stuff. We have 3 terrific parents of students who have been through the college search process, who have students who have experienced Jewish life on campus. Julie Gelfond, Felicia Ross, and Stuart Tauber. I'm going to ask, as we go through with the first question, if you can not only answer the first question, but introduce yourself in terms of where you're from and where you either have students in school or have had students in school, just for a little perspective. The first question I'd love for you all to share with the group is around the college search process. The search can be daunting. What did you do to specifically get a handle on Jewish life on campus when you were going through the college search process. And Julie, if we can start with you, that would be great.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, so I'm Julie Gelfand. I'm from Chicago, and I have a daughter who's a junior at University of Wisconsin-Madison. My daughter was coming from Lane Tech, which is one of the largest, if not, I think the largest high school selective enrollment in Illinois. And she, most of her friends weren't even Jewish. She grew up going to a Jewish day school, went on to high school, and knew she wanted diversity, knew she wanted a Jewish community as well, and figured she wanted a mid-sized school in the Midwest. And well, that sounds kind of easy. It wasn't necessarily so easy. So we narrowed down the search and added a few things to her list, actually, because I didn't feel that it was long enough. So we actually added some of the Big Ten schools, Madison, University of Illinois, since we're from Illinois, and a couple other schools that were also just Common Core, easy to put on the app. So Madison wasn't even really on her radar. She knew she wanted a school that was a little bit bigger than Lane Tech, which was, over 4,000 students, but didn't really know what any of that really meant. So we did go to visit a few of the schools, and it seemed like the further we went from home, the more she didn't like the school. And she told me she knows herself and she needed to be a driving distance away, not a plane ride away. And, 2.5, 3 hours. And I thought, she's just kind of a lot, but would grow as a student. And I kind of pushed her a little bit. When it came down to it, she really always stuck by that, which now, given the pandemic, I'm really happy we did, because this kid really knew herself. I just thought she was afraid, of going away. And she's very independent, but like I said, really loves home. So when it came down to it, it came down to between two schools, and one was Butler in Indiana and Wisconsin. And we weren't quite sure what to do. So we went for a second visit, and we went to Butler and loved everything about it, except at the very end of our information session, we raised our hand and said, could you tell us how many Jewish kids there are on campus? And they were not very happy with their answer. They would love to have more Jewish students if anyone's looking to go there, but there were not many. And there was a Hillel that floated in and out once a month, like, in a random rented room. And she didn't quite know how much she'd be involved in Jewish life, but knew she needed more than that. When we went to Wisconsin, we actually knew the director and the rabbi there. So we contacted them and said, hey, could you set up our kid with a couple kids that you've gotten to know from Hillel? And she shadowed them for the day and went separately with them. And at the end of the day, she looked at me and she said, it's Madison. And with it being such a huge school and a guidance counselor that said, your kid does not want to go to a big school, I was amazed. But it had a smaller feel to it. And just getting to know a couple kids and seeing the Hillel was a huge difference. Yeah. And she is now a junior, and all that it has to offer. And there was no looking back.
Fantastic. No, thank you so much, Julie. And yeah, that process of taking advantage, if you can get on campus, of actually visiting a Hillel, getting to know the professionals can be a big advantage. Felicia, please, if you can share your perspective.
I am Felicia Ross. Oh, am I unmuted? Hi, I'm Felicia Ross. I'm also from the Chicago area, from Buffalo Grove, Illinois. And we had a very different experience. I think it's great to have a lot of different panelists who have a variety of experiences, but our son was a high school swimmer and really just wanted to swim in college. So all of our college searches revolved around swimming. And we never even, I'm a Jewish educator, I'm a trained Jewish educator, and we really didn't even look at a Jewish component to colleges because we were so focused on swimming. At the 11th hour, he decided he didn't want to swim in college. And the only school he had really applied to that didn't have that didn't have the swimming component was University of Iowa. He had gotten into the business school and the honors program, and he said, this is fine, this is where I'll go. He loved Iowa City. And the first week of school that he was there, again, it wasn't, he said to me, Mom, you know, child of a Jewish educator, he wanted to get me. And he said, Mom, I'm never going to go to Hillel. You can't make me, you can't force me. I said, don't worry about it. You'll do what you want to do, and you'll find your way. So the first week of school, he was at Iowa, he got pneumonia. And I called Hillel to see if they could bring him soup. And the Hillel director was amazing. And she said, our kitchen isn't open yet, but I can make him soup at home and I'll deliver it to his dorm. And I said, well, I just want to let you know, he's never going to join Hillel. He's not going to be involved. He's never going to step foot in, but I really appreciate your offer. And he ended up somehow going to a Shabbat service. I don't know how. And he called us that night, like one of the first weeks of school. And he said, I found my people. This is it. I found my people at Hillel. These are the people who I just have a lot in common with. And I really enjoyed it. And I can't wait to go back again next Friday night. And it was all I could do to say, told you so, but I didn't. I was really good. I said, I'm glad to hear it. And this year with the pandemic, he told us very early into his first semester that what he missed most this year was going to Shabbat services.
Wow.
He misses the camaraderie, he misses the meals, he misses the social component of it. They still do Zoom services. They go and they pick up boxes of food and they eat together on Zoom, and they have a short service. But I know next year when things kind of open up a little bit more, it's going to be what he's really looking forward to the most.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Felicia. And, you know, I often will talk to parents who will report that, you know, that their child is just not, like, Jewish life is not a consideration for them. And these are even, you know, my kids both went to a Jewish day school in Rockville, Maryland. And so even, you know, students coming from more affiliated backgrounds, you know, will say, yeah, they did that. You know, they've been there, done that. That's not what they want college to be about. And yet the story you just offered is so consistent with often what we hear and see, which is they realize the student has a change of mind once they see what that experience locally at Hillel or otherwise, you know, in Jewish life you can bring them. And so the only thing from an advice point of view I often end up sharing is, you know, that people where a student has shown any interest in the past or had any connection, at least go to a campus where that option is there. You know, thinking back to what Julie had said about Butler, which is getting better, and we are supporting Hillel there. You know, if they have a change of heart, it's nice when at least the possibility of more robust Hillel life and Jewish student life is available there. So with that, let's shift over, and apologies to the whole crowd. This seems like a Big Ten program. It was not designed as such. I will, by the way, speak to some questions that have come up in the chat about other environments, but we will move around the Big Ten to the University of Maryland at College Park and to Stuart Tabor.
Thanks, Adam. So I'll just follow up on the comments that were already made. We're sort of at the end of this process. I have 3 kids. They've all, my youngest is now a freshman actually at University of Texas. My middle one is at University of Maryland, Big Ten, and I've actually had one who just graduated during last spring from Miami University of Ohio. And each of their searches was completely different. Each of their priorities did not overlap whatsoever. And what's interesting about that is they all grew up in the same household. My wife, also a Jewish educator at the same school where Adam's kids went. all my kids grew up in the Jewish camping environments in the Northeast. I live just outside of Washington, D.C. It's a high density Jewish population where we are, but yet when it came to selecting a school, I would say Jewish life on campus was either taken for granted or not necessarily a primary decision point because it wasn't something unique to my kids. It wasn't something they felt that they didn't experience or have in a youth group, et cetera, because they grew up in a house where celebrating their Jewish identity was important from both myself and my wife. But by the time the college search came, they all had their own different priorities. They all had different objectives. Some were more related to academics, some were more related to social. Some just wanted to get away from mom and dad. They just wanted to be in a place where they could grow and develop and sort of be on their own. And my one who's at Maryland, where I'm currently the board chair, she only wanted to be close to home. She knew that this was going to be incredibly important to her, and she's done fabulous. So each of our experiences were completely different. The process was completely different. And their engagement in Jewish life on each campus has been different. My son rarely went to Hillel, even though we visited the Miami Hillel when we went to on his college visits. My daughter Alana, who's very close because 20 minutes from school, can be home for different sort of different holidays, Shabbats, Jewish life events, etc. And my daughter, my youngest, who's at the University of Texas, wanted to be far away. And we'll talk briefly, but about how her connections, most of her roommate selections came from Jewish camping, friends of friends through different Jewish camps. So totally different, completely different experiences, but all have engaged in Jewish life on campus also in different ways.
Fantastic. And, I think Stuart's answer is so relevant to how everyone can think about the process, which is, just like every student is unique, the process you go through can be unique and there's no right or wrong. I do think it's good to go in with an understanding of at least what the options are. So taking advantage of things like the virtual college fair gets you a step ahead, but there really is no right answer. I'm gonna, because it's come up a few times in the chat, address this question of Hillel in smaller school environments versus large school environments. And then we'll get back to the panel in terms of hearing more about how their students have experienced life in general during the pandemic and how Hillel has or hasn't been able to play a role in that. As I said at the beginning, we really, as an organization, are committed to every Jewish student, and that's true whether you're at a campus with 5,000 Jewish students or with 50 Jewish students. The experience will vary, as you can imagine, because at a school with 5,000 Jewish students, many of the Hillels that we're talking about here, like a College Park or Wisconsin, they have a staff of 5, 10, 15 professionals to be able to really support and inspire that larger group. But, for example, at University of Iowa, you might have 1 or 2 professionals on path to, our director there, Ashley Fingerhead, is going to be building out, I think an even larger staff. Many of the schools that have small Jewish populations and are just much smaller schools overall, your small liberal arts organizations, we have a single Hillel professional who works as part of the chaplaincy or university structure. They have access to all of the training that we make available to every Hillel professional, all of the grant programs that we make available. And for example, the experiences that I highlighted before, even someone who's at a 1,500 student liberal arts college is able to participate in those programs. The only thing I would say to parents as they're evaluating, particularly those smaller school environments, is by definition, if you have a single professional, that individual is going to exert a lot of influence over what that experience is going to be like on that campus. So if you have a chance to reach out to that Hillel director or lead Hillel professional, and they are there to be in communication and relationship with you, do that, because you will get a better sense. Whereas if you're at a College Park, again, there's a broader set of professionals, so it's a little less dependent on the one professional. All right, so back to the panel, and this time let's start with Felicia. Tell us more about how your students have experienced the pandemic, and how Jewish life has or hasn't been a part of that.
So last year when Ethan was a freshman, there were barn dances, there was Shabbat, there were tons of activities going on at Hillel all the time. The Jewish community at Iowa is very small, but very tight. And they really, it's so funny because Iowa has about 20,000 students, but I walk, when we go to visit Ethan and we walk somewhere for breakfast or we're walking on campus, everybody's saying hi to him and everybody seems Jewish. It's so funny. He's like, yeah, I know them from Hillel. So I think there's a couple hundred of them who are active and they're everywhere. It's really kind of nice. But this year, obviously, things quieted down quite a bit. Ethan was given the opportunity to be the bicep intern for Hillel, which is the Birthright Israel interns. So at the very beginning, maybe like in October, so he was having one-on-one coffees with students masked and talking about Birthright Israel and talking about trying to get them to agree to go on an Iowa trip. That was really exciting. And hopefully it was going to happen in May, but it's been obviously postponed. But this internship gave him a great leadership opportunity, and it gave him a chance to really connect with a lot of the Jewish students on campus. I mean, it was fabulous. For everything else getting shut down, it felt like it gave him an opportunity to get out and still get to see people. A lot of classes have been online, and he's really enjoyed this internship a lot through Hillel. So a lot of Zooming this year. He said it is definite Zoom fatigue, but one quick funny story is that on a Friday night after Shabbat services, the Hillel director, Ashley, put together some Jeopardy game for all of the Hillel kids. And Ethan called us afterwards and said, I got to be the game show host on Jeopardy, and we had the best time. And he said, I was just creating questions and people were answering them, and there were probably 50 kids on this Zoom, and it was just so much fun. And I really, at that point in the year, I hadn't heard him really get excited about much because of the pandemic and because of everything being online and shut down. So getting those little moments of joy out of him during, what really is a very difficult year for a lot of these kids. His moments of joy have definitely come from Hillel so far this year. So
that's terrific to hear. Yeah, I really appreciate hearing it. And, I know how hard Ashley and all of our professionals have been working, even during these restricted periods, to create experiences and work with students so they can create their own. So it's really awesome when you hear that that's making a difference. Stuart, can you share with, you've got 2 students in school, like what that has been like for them?
So on opposite ends of the spectrum, my oldest one, who I mentioned at Maryland, is going to be graduating next month, was traveling abroad and actually used Hillel to potentially evaluate her overseas program, had strongly considered going to school in Tel Aviv. What ended up happening, all her friends wanted to go to Australia, and it became a social decision. She wanted to go away with her friends. So she ended up in Australia and had to come home during the pandemic. So she hasn't really been in a classroom now in 3 semesters because she was abroad, and then the 2 semesters remote learning. My youngest one, again, who's at the University of Texas, has not stepped foot in a classroom either, has been Zoom the entire year. But I would share this with you. She said, Dad, it's been totally fine, So in hindsight, her selection process of going to Austin, she visited with Maya, who's the Hillel director there, when my wife and her went down to Austin to visit. And she said, it's been great. And her selection actually turned out to be a good one for her, because the way I explained it, she's living a very adult existence as a college freshman. Off-campus housing, but it's all freshman kids. Again, all her roommate connections came from friends of friends through Jewish camping. I saw there's a question that was posted to the chat about the difference between Hillel and Chabad. At a school like University of Texas, there's a large Jewish population. There's lots of organizations that serve the Jewish student population there. And what you find is there's a lot of overlap in where kids decide to go for Shabbat, or how they engage, or eventually perhaps Greek life for those who want a different social experience. But she has not complained one bit. She's like, Dad, it's totally fine. She loves her freshman year. She is looking forward to stepping in a classroom. She has not yet, but two totally different experiences. One who's graduating, and this is being in a classroom, and one who, having not experienced being in a classroom, looks forward to perhaps getting in one. So two totally different ends of the spectrum. Yeah,
for sure. And because you raised it, we did get a question in the chat about Hillel and Chabad. We have the blessing. It's a wonderful time actually to have students going to campus in terms of Jewish life, because you have really robust Hillel presence, and you have Chabad presence in other organizations who are often present on campus. We tend to work in partnership with Chabad on many campuses. Our programming is quite different. They have a fairly traditional approach in many cases in terms of the core Jewish life experiences that they're focused on. And, we're often a little wider in terms of how we're trying to engage with students. But as Stuart just said, it is very typical for students to go even on a Friday night. They start at Hillel and then they go to Chabad. They start at Chabad and then they go to Hillel. Or where the Hillel and Chabad will, like at Washington University, where I have a senior, they'll actually alternate Shabbats in terms of where they're co-hosting a program together, or holidays. So, fortunately, again, I think, there are a wealth of opportunities, and for the most part, organizations are able to work nicely in partnership. We'll shift to Julie. What has the experience been like for Hannah, and anything in terms of the role of Hillel in that?
Yeah, so I think when Hannah was, first came onto campus, your move-in date is set, and it might be different for the different dorms and whatnot. And there was pretty much nothing to do for a week straight, except for Hillel. And she said, thank goodness for Hillel, because she felt welcomed, and they had, events going on, and they were one of the few. She then grew to be even more involved and engaged with Hillel. And in fact, when she would go for Shabbat, she, had a whole crew of kids that would sit together, and they now call themselves the Jew crew. And some of those are her roommates, to date. And, pandemic certainly has changed much, but Hillel definitely has been there the whole way. They had, they were out there with winter coats, having services outside, socially distanced, 6 feet apart, until they could no longer do it. And then, of course, shifted to Zoom. And Hannah very much embraced that, as did her friends. She had internships. When I was looking at the screen at the beginning saying all that Hillel offers, I was like, yep, Hannah did that. And I don't know that she would have thought she would have done any of it, especially coming from a school that was so diverse, and diversity was so important to her. And she had really no Jewish friends in high school, to this. So there was something about that. She knew she wanted a connection to a Jewish community, but Hillel has really spoken to her. And she's really taken advantage of a lot that it has to offer. And it truly has been there, for her during the pandemic, which has not been easy for any.
Yeah, for sure.
College student.
So I'm going to go ahead. There have been several questions that have come in through the chat that are Hillel specific. I'm going to go ahead and try to hit several of those in a lightning round, and then we'll do a lightning round with the panelists just to close out by offering their best piece of advice for parents as they're going through this process, or what they wish they knew. Going back to, earlier in the chat stream, there's a question about, if you can't visit campus, what data points would you recommend using, at least from a Jewish life point of view? The Hillel College Guide can be a terrific resource for data points. You can see what the total estimated Jewish student population size is on that campus. You can see if there is an active professionally staffed Hillel on that campus. you can see things like kosher dining availability, regular Shabbat activity and the like. So those are the kinds of things. And as a general rule of thumb, our staff size and programming reach is going to, largely equate to Jewish student population size. We certainly try to make sure there's enough resource on any given campus to, fully support and engage the total Jewish student population there. So as you look at the college guide, that can be one way to think about Jewish life on campus. And as I think Jamie had pointed out in the chat, you can follow every Hillel in social media or just reach out to the professionals there in addition to taking advantage of things like the Hillel College Fair. As another set of questions, we got questions around where Hillel is serving multiple campuses, and that is the case in many places. We have some situations like in Ontario where we have a single Hillel structure that then has staff on nearly a dozen campuses around Ontario. So it works like a network across those dozen campuses, but there are dedicated professionals on each campus. And then we have other situations like Michigan State, where they've put together an innovative program to be able to send on a rotating basis Israel fellows, Jewish educators, or others to really remote campuses in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that may have a handful of Jewish students, just so the Jewish students who are there are able to feel a part of the Jewish community. So, again, you can find out more as to whether the Hillel at a campus of interest has dedicated staff on that campus or is served in that more satellite way. For the most part, where we have presence, it is going to be with dedicated professionals on the campus. On the question of whether Hillels are employing staff as part of Hillel as an entity or the university, it's about 70-30. About 70% of our Hillels have 501c3 nonprofit structures where they can employ staff, and there are about 30% where the staff are embedded within a university structure. Oh yeah, great question around, does Hillel take into account the myriad of experiences and philosophies? Really, really important question in that what defines Hillel most fully is our inclusivity and our pluralism. Unlike some organizations, we don't say here's the way to practice or here is the philosophy that we subscribe to. We are there for every Jewish student. That means that in a more robust Hillel, you'll have a different minion for Reform, conservative, Orthodox, humanist, Reconstruct, whatever it may be. And in a more mid-sized Jewish student community or smaller community, we go with the most inclusive form from a religious point of view. But so much of Hillel extends beyond religious life and experience, and there too we are looking to be as inclusive as we can be, and we take such pride in building thriving communities that reflect the diversity of the Jewish community. And I just want to see, is there anything else? There is a question around how welcoming college and university administrators are. It is, fortunately, like we have great relationships on most campuses where we're present, and that's a part of our job, which is to make sure that administrators are in tune with the needs of the Jewish community and Jewish students. And thankfully that's the case at every university represented by the panelists and more broadly. Okay, that was a really quick rundown in terms of the chat. We're going to close it out here. We'll start with Stuart, just in terms of best piece of advice or what you wish maybe you knew about the search process.
So I think it's been our experience, my wife and I, where it was way more intense for the two of us. There was a much higher level of anxiety for us as moms and dads to figure it out and help drive them and manage the process and just be way too over engaged. And it was like that from kid 1, 2 to 3. We just simply didn't learn. Behind the scenes, all of my kids, they all went to the same school. They had friends in upper grades through athletics or other sort of Jewish youth groups. They've totally managed the process. They've talked to their friends who are freshmen or sophomores at schools. They've gotten good feedback. And going into the process, even though they'll tell my wife and I, oh, I've got a list of 10 or 12 schools, in their mind, they had it narrowed down to 1 or 2 sort of going into the process. That's how it worked for us. The college visits, I think, were hugely important, just to solidify their feedback from their friends and their sort of social networks. I'm not an avid social media user. My kids all are. They had already connected with people who they thought were going to be going to Maryland or Texas, even my son in Miami, and had sort of a little sort of chat of future friends who would be going to those schools. So they're way more engaged than we give them credit for. At least that's been my experience with all my kids.
Great, yeah, and Hillel can be a resource. So if a student is trying to get in touch with students on that campus, that's something, you know, the Hillel team will gladly, you know, help with. Julie, please.
I actually asked my daughter the question because, you know, we went about it like our personalities. So, you know, I know people that went to 25 school visits, and I could never. You know, my husband and I alternated taking care of our other kids. One stayed home, one went with. We went to look at a few schools. We figured possibly we'd look more at a school once she, you know, got into it and was accepted. And then we just narrowed it down, like what Stuart said. But when I asked her what her piece of advice would be, it was interesting. She said that she didn't realize how important it would be to have a Jewish roommate. I was kind of surprised and asked her why. And she said that for her, she didn't realize how many events she'd be going to and how nice it was to have someone when you don't know anyone to just grab and go. And her roommate went to Greek life. My child did not. They're still the best of friends. Her roommate also did a lot of Chabad. Hannah did a lot of Hillel, but then they interchanged and they were both interns at Hillel. You know, like Stuart said, there's a lot of, you know, mixing. But she said it was so nice. She had so many friends on her floor in her dorm, but it was so nice to have that Jewish person to just grab and go to an event.
Yeah, well, it's terrific to get that kind of direct advice and input from your student. And, you know, with daughters, one of whom had in their first year a Jewish roommate and one who did not, it can work both ways. My daughter, who had a non-Jewish roommate, took her non-Jewish roommate to Hillel every week. And again, Hillel, back to being welcoming. You know, we love seeing any students who are coming along for those experiences, and that can have some positive impact as well.
And I also just want to ditto on that. Hillel is one of the most accepting places I think I've ever seen. It's really an amazing place.
It's great to hear that validation, because that is certainly what we're striving for. All right, Felicia, you get to bring us home.
One thing that I just wanted to mention that I totally forgot about. Last summer, you were asking about how did the pandemic change programming and things that they were doing. Last summer, Hillel did an online Israeli cooking class for students at Iowa. Have you heard about this? My son is the worst cook in the entire world, but he signed up. I kind of nudged him, like, you should sign up. Like, what else are you doing this summer? And he signed up. He got a stipend to buy groceries, but somehow pocketed that and had me buy all of his groceries. And Ashley sent everybody a cookbook, an Israeli cookbook. And every Thursday night, he would go on Zoom and make our kitchen a mess. And we'd all be running around cooking with him. And it was just a blast for all of us. We got falafel and hummus and all kinds of baba ganoush. We had great food the whole summer. And he also met his girlfriend in the online cooking class, and they've been dating since last July. So that was a great program. Just very creative programming is happening despite the pandemic. But back to the question at hand is, one thing that I want to suggest is find the university parent page. They're unofficial. They're all over Facebook, and ask on the parent page, ask your questions, because you're going to get some really honest answers, whether you want them or not. But a mom the other day on the Iowa page asked something about Jewish life on campus, and a lot of people chimed in. And not only did I chime in, but I offered my kid to to give them a tour of campus. And they ended up taking him out to lunch on Sunday. And he called me afterwards and said they were the nicest family, but I kind of threw him under the bus and said, will you just do me a favor and give this family a tour? But that's a great way to hear really honest reflections of what's going on campus. And maybe even a lot of campuses aren't giving tours right now, or you can't get in. You might find somebody who's willing to have their child, their student, give your family a tour around campus.
Absolutely. Well, go ahead, Julie. Yeah.
My daughter is a tour guide for Madison, and they are doing tours, and it's like this. You can ask questions and so forth, you know, and I'll offer her up for tours.
There you go. Yeah, the resources are there, which is great. I really want to thank Felicia, Julie, and Stuart for taking time to be a part of this program. I want to thank everyone who turned out and for your patience. I know we ran a little bit long, but there's a lot to talk about. Please don't be strangers. Be in touch with Hillel International. Be in touch with your local Hillel, and take good advantage of the college fair visits that will take place over the next few days. Thanks, everyone. Shavua Tov. Have a great rest of your week.